You've mentioned already about cancer.
In 2017, I got diagnosed with stage 4 Hodgkin lymphoma. Creativity for me was the backbone of the whole process. It was what gave me a reason to get out of bed. Whacking is a subgenre. It's kind of like a physical manifestation of disco music.
Did I see you recently at the Tate?
Yes,
well,
it was really epic, and I had no business being there because I'm not a model. And now I can say that I've catwalked at the Tate. I am finally coming back after 5 years, and I'm going to be on the main stage of Manchester Pride as my persona, Shanika Sunrise. 6 months, 3 biopsies, persistent visits to the GP that I finally saw it as something else. This is a shout out to Joe for saving my life.
Hello, and welcome back to Where Creatives Connect. My name is Jamie Sharp, and this podcast is all about digging into creatives from literally all over the world, whether they be dancers, choreographers, musicians, literally anything, you name it, I'll have them on. And it's my job to dig into really who they exactly are, what they exactly do, what their creative process is, and what's been part of their journey to lead them to be who they are today. I'm very excited today because I have a wonderful human on that I've not seen. I think it must be about 10 years.
It's been a long time.
Very long time. Jay is a wonderful dancer, a wonderful choreographer, a wonderful drag artist, a wonderful sharer of positive energy that you don't know the story to yet, but I will tell you about this. I've alluded to it just before, but we'll get there. And you've not always had the easiest of times along the way, which we'll dig into. But I am so happy that you're here today, and I'm so excited to dig into everything, and I mean everything that you are up to. How are you doing?
I'm absolutely buzzing to be here. Yeah, and thanks for all those kind words. Yeah, I'm really excited to really get into it.
Super.
And it is good to see you after such a long time.
I know, it's been bloody ages. It has been ages. Now, I'm going to give you a really annoying question to begin with, which is your Uber pitch. If you are in the back of an Uber,
yeah,
maybe going to do a gig on a Saturday night in town, and they say, "What do you do for a living?" What do you tell them?
Okay, this is a really difficult question. I think I'd probably just say performer in general, because my immediate thought was dancer, but then when I'm doing music, I'm not really dancing. And then I was going to think of cabaret, but then I don't always do drag.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just say I'm a performer. I'm an entertainer, and I work in bars in Manchester at the moment.
At the moment,
yeah.
For now,
very broad. Yeah, it's very difficult. Yeah.
I'm going to dive into one of those things to begin with.
Okay,
which is drag.
Yes.
The most recent thing I've seen on your Instagram is a very exciting bit of news to do with Pride this year. Tell us all about it.
So I am finally coming back after 5 years, after a little self-care hiatus, and I'm going to be on the main stage of Manchester Pride on Saturday, the 26th of August, as my persona, Shanika Sunrise. We'll do like a little,
love it.
So I'm really excited because it's going to be an opportunity for me to sort of relaunch myself and just get back out there after a long time away.
Amazing. If you were to describe Shanika Sunrise to somebody that hasn't seen you perform, how do you sort of boil it down into a nutshell?
Okay, I'll find 3 words. Synthetic, dumb, and hilarious.
Love it. For those people that are watching that have never experienced drag at all, what is drag? How did you get into it? I'll leave you with those 2 questions because
for now.
Actually, hold on. Let's go with what is drag first.
Okay. So drag is very broad nowadays. It's really difficult to define, but I would say drag is an expression of your personality in a creative form, and it transcends gender, it transcends convention. And it's just an elevated form of personal expression, I would say.
From everything that I know about you, I think it's a brilliant platform for you to express lots of different things because, like you've mentioned, you are a performer, but you also create music. You also are very good at makeup. You're also very good. Yeah. You've got all of these different facets to who you are. And it seems to be a really concise way to put it all together.
Yeah, definitely. I think, when you're asking me to sort of define what it is that I do at the moment, drag is kind of the outlet that encompasses all of that. So, with that, I can be musical, I can make my music, I can choreograph and just be artistic in general. I think for me, it is just like it's an opportunity to just project all of my creative energy in a form, in a personality, and a character.
Tell us, how did you get into it?
Oh, so this is kind of like it's quite a complicated story. I'll try and keep it as simple as possible. I've always been a performer, as you know.
Yeah.
Back in high school, I was always doing theatre productions, and I've been dancing, and I've done loads of various different types of things. But in 2017, I was unfortunately diagnosed with cancer, and as a result, I ended up taking a break from everything, and I had a lot of free time on my hands, which was a benefit of the process. And my lovely friends at the time, knowing that I was going to lose my hair from chemotherapy, bought me some wigs. So I put two and two together, and I thought, I have this period, this indefinite free canvas of creative sort of potential. I now have all these wigs.
Yeah.
So what am I going to do? And I just put them on, and boom, Shanika was born.
No way.
Shanika Sunrise, and it's been chaos ever since.
That's beautiful. And I love that actually came from a bit of a nudge from other people as well.
Yeah.
Like, here's a gift, and then you're like, okay, what can I do with this?
Yeah, definitely. I think they kind of knew. I think I've always been a creative personality, and they'd seen that tendency. And I think at the time I was very inspired by RuPaul's Drag Race as well. I think all of us were watching season 9 at the time, and it was, we were just talking about it, and my friends had just thought, well, you should do it. You should go for it. So I went for it.
And here you are.
And here I am. Yeah.
Amazing. Now, that's interesting you say RuPaul, because one thing that I've always thought about with drag is that I think I've consumed 85% of what I've ever seen of drag from TV, and only the rest in person. Had you actually seen drag live before getting stuck into it yourself?
Yes, I actually had, because it all happened very quickly. Actually, I think my first sort of insight into drag was from theatre. It was from playing female roles. At the time, going to sort of an all boys sort of school, and so that was my not. I wouldn't necessarily say it was an awakening, but it was kind of an insight for me that you can sort of bend the rules a little bit and try different sort of boundaries and act in roles that aren't necessarily conventional. And then I think RuPaul's Drag Race was something that gave me the vocabulary to sort of compartmentalize what it was that I was interested in. Then I went and saw shows, and I saw people sort of doing what you won't see on TV, which is maybe more political statements rather than just sort of aesthetics. I'm not saying this to dismiss it. I'm just, that it's very broad. I kind of tried to do all of my research, and then I just was exhausted, and I decided that I would just give it a go anyway. And so, I started off with this really concentrated character, and I tried to think of all these catchphrases, and then I just took a completely different direction, and then I started making music, and then now I'm just kind of it's just projection of who I am, really, and I don't have to worry too much about making it palatable for everyone and streamlining it.
There's a danger, isn't there, when you're trying to please the masses, that you lose a sense of who you are as well. And I think when you're amplifying your own inner thoughts or your own view of the world, that can be a dangerous kind of balance. If you're always trying to please everybody, it's actually, no, let's draw a line. Is it really about me right now? I've seen lots of different types of drag acts across the years, and lip syncing is a big part of it. I've not seen as many people do exactly what you do as well, which is to create some of your own music to lip sync to. Why did you lean into creating your own music when there's already so much out there? Is this just another expression of who you are?
I think definitely. It all comes down to what drag means for me, and drag is just it's just a projection space for all of my creative impulses. I am a musician. I love music, and I've loved to make music in the past anyway. And I saw it as an opportunity to kind of experiment with artistry in that way, and be able to sort of make my own music. I think at the time as well, when I was experimenting with drag, and I was taking my time off, I wasn't very public with it. It was just for myself. So I never had any intentions of kind of taking my music to be performed. It was just something that I was working on, and it was catharsis really, as well, born out of the context of obviously not being very well. My music, especially my first single, was literally satire. It was all based on that. You know, and my lyrics reflect that as well. And I just always wanted to sort of create my own performance. I think I really enjoy lip syncing to other people's things, but I always have to add something else. You know, if I'm doing if I'm lip syncing like one of my favorite songs, I'd always mix it with like a pop culture reference, because I try and make it different, and like, you know, I try and tell a story through it. And I think the rawest form of that is to do my own stuff. The only reason I don't do more of it is that it's expensive, and I'm doing it all on my own. So,
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. It's a lot, but it's also so impressive to see because there's so much depth and thought going into it. So
Yeah, thank you. It's really satisfying. It's like my baby, you know, you have a song out and it's like, that's, you know,
yeah, totally.
it's productive. Yeah, all of that.
Well, good luck with Pride, and good luck with all of it.
Yo, just a quick one from me. I'm currently travelling across New Zealand, and one thing that I bring with me every single day to keep myself safe is my NordVPN. And you too can stay safe by following my link in the description below. If you're not too sure what a VPN is, a VPN essentially allows you to be James Bond online. Stay undercover and stay safe. There are literally millions of ways for people to steal your details online and use them for their own benefit, and we don't want that. If you use my link, not only does it massively help out the podcast, but it gives you up to 68% off a 2-year subscription with 3 months extra free. Stay safe online, use NordVPN, on with the podcast.
You've mentioned already about cancer. Are you able to explain when about that was? You're 26 tomorrow.
Yes.
Just for reference. When was this in your life and how long did it last for?
In 2017, I was officially diagnosed, but I kind of, it began, I guess, in September 2016, and I was 19 at the time.
Wow.
And I was studying, I was at uni, and I was doing 150 billion things. I'm completely overloading the system. And actually part of this was one of the reasons why my diagnosis was so late, because I was exhausted, and I looked at it as a lifestyle sort of, as a product of that, and the fact I wasn't getting enough rest. And it was only after sort of 6 months and 3 biopsies and persistent visits to the GP that I finally, you know, not only got taken seriously, but also saw it as something else. And then unfortunately, around about Easter time, in 2017, I got diagnosed with stage 4 Hodgkin lymphoma, and I had 6 months of chemotherapy. I left uni at the time, and I took just a temporary break because everyone was saying at the time that my age was on my side, that my attitude was going to sort of propel me through it all. And I never really saw it as something that was, you know, it was obviously terrible and devastating, but I was just determined to see it through. And I had a, you know, my sense of humor and everything was kind of, you know, part of that. And that's when I was trying on all my synthetic bobs. But then I went back to uni after achieving remission after 6 months. And I then discovered that I actually hadn't been in remission. And that what had happened is I had refractory disease, which basically just means that, you know, it might respond initially to chemotherapy, or it might not at all. But in my case, it had. And there just wasn't enough of it to be present on a scan. So I'd been given sort of a false remission diagnosis, and I ended up then leaving. And because of the nature of refractory disease, the way to sort of completely lock it out of you know, preventing relapse, which is what had happened, is to have a complete sort of factory reset, which is otherwise described as a stem cell transplant, which is what I ended up having. So I left uni for good this time, and I just didn't really know where I was going to be at. And I tried 4 different treatments, and it was quite worrying at the time because none of them were working, and they were all as awful as each other. But then luckily we managed to sort of tread water and wait on this drug that was being passed on the NHS. And it miraculously got passed at the time that I just needed it, and I ended up getting into remission. And then my brother was a stem cell match.
Amazing.
And so I was saved in many ways, and specifically, this is a shout out to Joe for saving my life. And I had my stem cell transplant in 2019. And then 6 months later, I was back at uni far too early. I shouldn't have gone back.
Wow.
So yeah, I shouldn't have gone back so early. But I was there. And then we had the pandemic, which I actually received with open arms because it gave me time to heal.
Yeah.
So, you know, I was literally, it was a very unconventional experience, but I really used that year to kind of just process things. And yeah,
Rightly so.
now we're
What a
here.
journey. And now you're
Yeah.
here. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Slay.
um Firstly, wow. What a journey to do at any age, but so young. And at a time where, you know, you're leaving school, you're finding yourself in the world, you're finding your identity on all platforms, and then to have to deal with that in all of its different guises. um, I can't even come to imagine how difficult that is. So well done for being so strong through all of that. It's
Thanks,
yeah, it's hard. It's hard. The reason I wanted to bring that side of your life up, partly is to talk about resilience and potential burnout.
Okay.
And the other side is creativity and how that has potentially helped you, or what your experience was with that. I'm going to go to the first one first.
Okay.
So you mentioned that you went straight back after 6 months to uni before the pandemic hit. Do you think there is something sort of inbuilt within who you are as a person that needs to be moving and having momentum, whether it be a creative push or just in life? Because it seems to be a bit of a common thread amongst creatives to just go,
Yeah.
go, go, go until they burn out. What's your experience with that?
Yeah, it's definitely who I am. I say that because I think it's quite a flexible thing, but it's I'm definitely that type of personality. I was going mad, to be honest. You know, as awful as it was, I couldn't, as soon as I got a sense of the fact that things, you know, might be looking up and that I might have sort of an end to it, I just faced forward as a distraction. And I just, you know, I said to everyone at the time, I'm just gonna apply to unis. And I think my nurses were looking at me and, you know, saying, well, that's lovely. Yeah, you know, give it a go if it's something for you to focus on as a distraction. But I was, you know, dead serious about it, and I did. I did do it. And actually, in hindsight, it probably wasn't the wisest idea because I had a very difficult first year. Because my body was just, it was just all over the place, really. I had loads of random complications as a result of being nuked. So yeah, it probably wasn't the wisest decision. But it's who I am. And I definitely think, yeah, both in a creative way and in just a general sort of productivity sense. I do best when when I've got something going on. Free time has got to be filled.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I feel you. I hear you. And it's really, really hard. I think going back as well to when you were diagnosed, you shared something on Instagram yesterday. Was it World Blood Cancer Day?
World Blood Cancer Day. Easy for me to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was a post that you put about symptoms.
Yes.
And so many of them, a bit like how, you know, what you mentioned before, can be a result of burnout and rundownness in general.
Yeah.
And do you think that's why it took so long for you to actually recognize maybe this is more than being burnt out,
Yeah.
run down?
Definitely. Well, I mean, it's strange because it's like there are two elements to it. The simplest answer is yes. You know, I was working and I was doing loads of different things, and I was just shattered, and you know, I put that down to just being a student and just doing too many things. But the second part of it is that I also am an overthinker. And I'm not a hypochondriac, but I thought initially that it was perhaps something else.
Yeah.
And this was me jumping like miles ahead. This was like 6 months before I even had, you know, genuine like physical symptoms, or you know, it had got to an extent, it had progressed to an extent where people were looking at it as something that was definitely something else. I'd already convinced myself way early on that it was something else.
Right.
It was only when I'd had my first appointment that they were just kind of looking at it, and they were saying, oh yeah, well, you know, you've got low iron, and it's, you know, our blood tests are fine otherwise, that I just kind of parked it. But my mind went straight there initially. And this is the weird thing, because I was, you know, I didn't tell anyone about this until it had gotten so bad to an extent that I had to obviously tell my family about it. And then I was having loads of hospital appointments. But I would say, yeah, there are two parts to it, because I think it was the idea that the symptoms are so common, for, for people who were just living that sort of lifestyle, that was my escape. And it was kind of not escape, but that was kind of what I parted on. So my mind had kind of, I'd freaked myself out initially, but then I'd been like, oh, but exactly, these symptoms are very normal, and it's because of the way that I am that it is like this. But it's really weird. It's kind of like it's not a universal thing, because it's like, if you know, you know. But for me, it just felt like there was something in the air. Like it's really strange. Yeah.
When you were in hospital quite a lot, and actually out of it, I suppose, how did creativity play amongst your time? And this will lead me on to our mutual friend in a moment. How did you use it? Was it an active choice to like, okay, I'm going to get up today and make something, or were things offered to you in hospital? How did it work?
It was everything, actually. Creativity for me was the backbone of the whole process. It was what gave me a reason to get out of bed, and if I didn't get out of bed, sit up,
yeah.
and do something, because it was just kind of like, it was my idea of it was catharsis for me, but it was also a way of understanding what I was going through. I think it's such an abstract experience, and it is an artistic experience as well, without sounding really pretentious about it. It's like, it's so bizarre, like the idea that you could be just so out of control in that way of things. And so my way of sort of, I guess, gaining control was to sort of frame it in a creative way. And this comes into drag, because it was music really that kept me going. And I had my laptop with me when I was there. And when people were coming to change my dressings or give me bloods or whatever, I was literally on Ableton, like making like my music. And it was like, even if I couldn't walk around because I was just too swollen or whatever, it was just something in my mind. I was like, I'm working on something, and I'm gonna write music, and I'm just gonna get through it. On the better days, it would be something else. It might be choreography. If I was released and I had released, but sounds like on my better days and I had more sort of stamina and energy, I would dance and do all of those things. But I think music for me was that carrier that really did get me through it. And I think that's why with the song that I had, my first single, which is Sued, was all about that. And I've got videos on my old hard drive of like self sort of recordings of like raps and stuff that I was doing, because it was all made during this time.
Ah, wow.
Like one of the lyrics was, I'm a fierce little thing when I pop in the ring. They'll never be ready. I'm a queen, a king. Make 'em run for the hills as I do my thing. Beat it once before and I'm still fighting. So it's literally like, you are getting sued is like, obviously I'm framing it in this sort of corporate bitch like personality, but it's like, no, I'm gonna beat this, and I'm gonna take you to court, like you being like life or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So it's all a manifestation of my experience. It's all it's a cathartic process. And I don't think I could have managed it in any other way, really, because it's sense of humor as well. Like, it's a lot of it is your mentality.
That's amazing. And you wouldn't have necessarily come up with that or that side of the character without any of those experiences. But again, that's hats off to you for taking such a diabolical experience and flipping it around into not just something that's like, yeah, it's good. It's like, this is great. I've now got something, and it's now your job. It's like how you spend your life. It's genuinely amazing. It's inspiring. Now let me bring you onto this story. Did we say 2019, 2018?
2019, I think, is when I met this person.
Okay, so I met this person on a night out with a group of friends, and we were having drinks in Manchester, and she works at the Christie, and she was telling me about the activities that they get up to with patients, with one another, and she was telling me about a few different people, and then she came on to this one person who loved making music, loved creating stuff. But this is the bit that always stuck with me. I was like, oh, that sounds brilliant. Like, what a great thing to be able to do. What she started to say was that there were so many people that were on the ward or in the building that were starting to be inspired to have a go themselves because they were watching this person just go full guns blazing at what they were doing. And they were getting up and they played the saxophone and they were always on the piano and on Ableton and dancing around half the time when they could. And I was listening to this, I was going, this feels familiar. This feels like I know exactly what you're talking about. And then I think I zoned out for about 20 minutes, just kind of thinking about it. And I just went, it's not somebody with the last name Swinnerton, is it? And she was like, yes, it is. And she was talking about you.
Oh.
And it was just this beautiful moment where she had just told this story out of nobody provoked her or told her, oh, I know we've got a mutual friend here.
Yeah.
She just came out with this story talking about you and that what you were doing wasn't just amazing within itself. It was inspiring all of these other people who had never touched an instrument before and probably never even told you that they probably just saw or heard from afar what you were up to. So yeah, you are, when I mentioned in the first bit about you having this positive energy that is so infectious to people around you, that's really what I was sort of referring to.
Oh, that's so lovely. I didn't know about this. But that's really special. That is.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that because you don't I didn't know, and actually it means a lot that it helps other people.
Yeah.
Like that's why else are you doing it, you know?
Totally.
Oh, that's so nice.
I know. It was so warm. It was so like warm and fuzzy amongst a rather raucous night out. It was it was like very contrasting. So yeah, well done for
Thanks for
being
thinking
you.
about that.
No, it's good to share those things because you're right as well. You don't know because it's not. It's much more weird to go up and it's not weird, but it's more uncomfortable. I think for people to go up and say those vulnerable things.
Yeah, it is. Vulnerable is the word. It's such a strange environment. I think there specifically, when you're in the game specifically, because you don't know how much to interact. You don't know, you don't know what people's experiences are, and you don't know how people are feeling, and you've just got no clue. Basically, it's an isolating experience, and also, but you want to find community, but then it's like you find out someone's not having a good day, and you're having a good day, and then it makes them feel like crap, and then you feel bad as well. And it's just like, the interactions are really strange. I think for me, like when I was making music and I was in the music room with this person and all of that, it was my only sort of opportunity to interact with people, because all you were talking about was that. It would rarely go on to sort of, how was it going?
Yeah.
Because it's a taboo subject, which makes no sense, because if it's the only place you should be able to talk about things like that. But yeah, it's a really nice yeah, it's really helpful to hear that, and I really appreciate that, because you just wouldn't know. Like,
No, you don't.
it's really weird.
Yeah, it is. I think there's a lot of unsaid stuff in the world like that.
Just dark.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Now let me go on to another chapter of who you are, which is dance.
Yeah.
I have watched you dance for many, many years now. You're amazing. You're
Thank
absolutely
you.
amazing.
Aw.
The energy that you bring is unlike anything else I get to see. So no, it's amazing. That must have been particularly hard when your body wasn't working with you to have to put that on the back burner. How quickly after or going back to uni were you able to really kind of get fully back into dance?
To be honest, in the grand scheme of things, my forced recovery, because a lot of the time I just kind of threw myself at it anyway, was about 6 to 7 months to have sort of to be mobile again properly. And to get, I wasn't the epitome of strength, but I was able to dance again after about 6, 7 months. But I think what was really good and what was really helpful, and one of the reasons I'm so lucky, is that I had a dance teacher called Julie, who had always kept this sort of space open for me. And she was like, as soon as you're better, like, we'll get you back, and we're gonna do some whacking, which is like my favorite style. We're gonna do some whacking workshops, and yeah, you just, even if you're not feeling it, you can just come and chill with us. And I think just knowing that it was something that I could do and go back to was something that just kept me moving along. But yeah, it was frustrating, because it was, prior to sort of being unwell, dance was something I was doing 24/7. It's one of the reasons why I was so knackered, actually, because I was teaching as well, and I was doing all of those things. I can't deny either, though, that when I was in the Christian, when I was an inpatient, I did still, if I was mobile, I would like take the mic and like, you know, there was like clicking sounds on the chemo machine, and I used to do these like silly videos of me just like twerking to like the beat, but it was like not every day, because obviously
Yeah.
like I wasn't feeling 100% at the time, but I was still trying to sort of, you know, do a little
Yeah.
yeah
keep it
yeah,
flow
just
going.
keeping it calm. But no, yeah, I think yeah, it takes its toll on you physically. And actually, even a year afterwards, this is part of my first year going back. Even a year afterwards, when I was at university, I was competing. Like I'd literally done on my first year anniversary from my transplant. I was in Edinburgh, and I was on stage, and I was dancing, and I just remember having this moment and being like, a year ago, I couldn't walk up the stairs.
Wow.
And I was like, yeah, I've got, it's one of, we can talk about it maybe later, but
Yeah.
it was a big moment for me, because what I do remember is like, before I was diagnosed, when I was waiting on my biopsy results, I was also at a dance competition for the same thing, but I couldn't get through the performance because I was so unwell.
Wow.
So I remember before, it was in Manchester, I was, you know, when I was 19, I had like 3 Red Bulls before I went on stage. And I was like, towards the end of it, I was like, I just couldn't get it through. And I was gutted, because it was the first time that I'd felt physically like unable to do the thing that I loved to do. And there was a lot of pressure as well, because I taught this piece, and it was like, you know, I'd spent months with my team, and, you know, we were all really excited about it. But I was like, I just messed that up, and
Yeah.
it wasn't my fault, obviously, but
Of course not.
it's a funny parallel, really, because, you know, I'd had my transplant, and then literally a year afterwards, I was doing the same thing, and it was like a full circle moment.
And it's interesting what you start to realize when you've had a massive event in your life like that. You start to notice those things. You're like, is that meant to be?
Yeah, it's
Is that it?
really yeah.
It's unusual. Dancing is literally part of when I think of you, it's like those two things are
Mhm.
synonymous. Is that the right word? Synonymous? As long as I have known you, you've always been a dancer. From the early days that I think back, was it Sandbach Street Dance that you was
Yeah,
your first?
SDA, yeah, Street Dance Academy was where I was. That was kind of the first place that I started learning to dance. I think I'd always been a mover. We can check the camcorder footage.
Yeah.
But you know, this was my first sort of formal dance training that I had, and I just loved it. And then when I met you and we were in high school, we had these evenings of dance and physical theatre. And that
Yes.
was wonderful, because that gave us an opportunity to do our own stuff.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
then me and also Jay, my other friend, we would do our own sort of like duo dances. And yeah, it kind of took off from there. I've always had it in me, but I've had a lot of help from those opportunities.
Was your friend Jay more into break?
Yeah, well, Jay's done everything, to be honest. Tap, jazz, modern, all of those different things. But yeah, but to be honest, me and Jay met at a street dance school. So we were doing a similar sort of style, but I think nowadays I do a lot more sort of femme, like jazz funk, whacking style dance.
Are you able to explain what whacking is, or the style? Like, how do you describe whacking?
So whacking is a subgenre of I guess it comes from sort of the disco era, and it's an extension of a subculture, of an underground subculture for queer persons of color, really, just creating a statement and dancing in a way that is freely expressive, and expressing themselves in a way that perhaps society at the time wasn't ready to accommodate them in that way. And whacking, is very much it's with your arms. It's very dynamic. It's very freeing. It looks really impressive if you can do it well, because it's very sort of fast a lot of the time, but it's very it's kind of like a physical manifestation of the disco music.
I love it.
But I mean, I whack to anything, I don't always whack to disco music, or house or whatever. It's, I joked once and did like a skit video to Enya, and I was just whacking to Enya once, so but
Love it.
but no, but whacking it's like for me it's a raw expression. It's like it's like a shot of energy,
Mm. I think the thing I find so impressive about watching you do it is that there's moments that appear to be sort of the chaotic energy that you very quickly realize it's not, it's uber precise because of where you then sort of catch or stop.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And I'm
yeah.
like, oh no, that was all like it was all like planned. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
absolutely. Yeah, I think it's it's there's a balance, isn't there? Because you're moving with whacking specifically. Are you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's a very fast sort of, you can go from being really fluid with your hands and with your arms
Mm,
to, but you have to hit the beats. At the end of the day, it has to translate musically.
totally.
But I think that's what's so captivating about it. Because you don't know where it's going to go, and you can put your own twist on it as well. People whack in different ways.
Mm,
It's there is still some freedom in the genre to express your style of it.
mm.
But yeah,
It's very aesthetically pleasing. It really is to
it's
watch.
it's fab, isn't it? I love it. I
Now,
love whacking.
you have talked about you as a performer, as a dancer, but you are a big choreographer as well. How did you transition into just saying, yeah, I'm going to choreograph pieces? Were you making stuff up for yourself and then somebody said, oh, could you do it for me or this group? How did it work? Because that's a big step. It's like musician to composer sort of thing.
Yeah. I think for me, it was exactly that. So I was choreographing for myself first of all, and it would be little showcases. So it would be, like in high school or whatever, and I'd do like my own sort of routines. But then when I went to university, I found sort of a dance collective, like as just a society, and that was all kind of like in-house choreography. And then we would have similar showcases like the ones we'd have in high school there, and then I did a piece of my own. And then the committee asked me in first year if I could choreograph for their intermediate team initially. And I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. I was like 18, and I was like, oh my God, I'm a choreographer. Yeah. And I did this little piece. And yeah, from that minute onwards, I then decided to run for the committee the next year. So then I ended up being dance coordinator, which meant that if I wasn't choreographing everything, I was overseeing a lot of creative direction, and I was doing at least the majority of it. Unfortunately, this was the year that I then dropped out because I wasn't well. But it was kind of, I banked on having those sort of examples of my work, and then I used those when I wasn't well to basically be like, this is what I can do. And so then I got back in touch with Julie, who was my dance teacher from, back in the day. And she was like, oh, like you're teaching now, like come and teach with us. And then I was just basically just doing it like that. And then when I did uni the second time and I moved somewhere else, I was a lot more experienced, and I had these different pieces collectively. And I basically was just like, this is what I can do. And then I ended up doing the role that I wasn't able to fulfill very well at Warwick, and because I wasn't well, and I did it again at Manchester, and this time I choreographed the dance, and we did well, we won, so I'm very proud of that.
Good work.
And so I basically used that as an opportunity, as an example of what I can do, because there were loads of different styles in it, and I was just like, look, I am now a choreographer. You have to sort of like decide one day like
Yeah.
what you are. I think that's what it is with being a creative. Like, it doesn't mean that you're an expert necessarily in whatever it is you do, but you have to start somewhere. And I think at this time I had a body of work that clearly showed what I could do, and I just said, look, I am a choreographer. I'm not saying I'm the best choreographer, but this is an example of my work, and if you want me, I'm here. And then people did, and people said, I love it. I love this bit that you did. Can you come back and do something similar? And so that's what I've done this year. I think when you dance all the time, you develop sort of an aptitude for thinking on the spot and choreographing anyway. And so now when I've worked with other artists and they've hired me as a backing dancer, and they've been at a loss and they've thought, oh, actually, I don't know how to fill this 8 count. You just fill that slot for them.
Yeah.
And then you get another opportunity, and it comes along that way. So yeah, I think because I'm a full-time student and I'm not actually like teaching regularly, it's something that has just happened organically.
You've touched upon a really, really important thing that we mentioned before, before the podcast, about how you title it. It is what you do. So you're right. At some point, you just have to decide, I have done these things and I'm interested in this, and this is where I can put my energy. So I now am a choreographer. Or
Yeah.
it was the same for me with composing. I'd always written music, but for myself or for sort of small projects, that it was never, here's my portfolio of stuff. And then I realized I enjoy it so much, or I'm already doing it, it would be great to collaborate with more people. And then, yeah, I just became that thing. And it's, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a confidence thing. It's like a firming up of your own belief,
Yeah,
really.
absolutely. Yeah.
It's really, and it also changes. I imagine in 5 years' time, if we had the same conversation, it will have moved into a slightly different category or whatever as well.
Definitely.
Interesting. Now, we've talked about lots of creative elements to who you are as a
Yeah.
person, but another side of who you are is that at university, you're studying things that are outside of the realms of creative arts as well.
Mhm.
You're bilingual?
Yes.
Bilingual? Very good. Is it Italian?
Italian, yeah.
Italian? Okay. I should have done some homework and learned some Italian phrases, but I don't have any.
You can do a little ciao. Fluent.
Nailed it. Now,
Ciao. Yeah.
you have lived in Italy.
Yeah.
For was it a year you did your
Yeah, I
Yeah.
did. Oh, I
Very
loved
good.
it.
Tell us about that.
Oh my God. So,
So actually, I'm going to chop in.
yeah.
Is your course in Italian? What is it?
I'm doing a joint honours, so I'm studying history and Italian.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's like 2 degrees, but like in one.
You're very casual about that. That's quite a big thing to do.
Yeah, I love it, but on the same, I do love it, but I'm also raring to go and just get out of education. It's just been a long time, and I finished this week, so but yeah, no. So should we talk about Italy?
Do it.
Okay, so Italy was really wonderful, but it was chaos because of Brexit. So the first thing, I'll just keep this really short and sweet, is that obviously now because of Brexit, there's all of this sort of bureaucracy that you have to go through to get residency permits and visas and all of that. And we were the first sort of year to actually have to go through all of that. So I essentially just found myself in Bologna with no idea like what I was supposed to do. I had 90 days of like legal like residency because you can just travel in
Sort of
between.
holiday visa
Yeah,
type thing,
basically holiday
yeah.
visa, exactly. And my Italian was subpar, like, and I basically had to go to this post office, which is actually a huge palace, like police station.
Wow.
And I was just like, hi, like I need a residency permit, like what have I got to do? And then you've got to submit all of these different documents. And I was just like, I don't know where to go, and like and then you're finding yourself somewhere trying to talk to someone in a language you don't speak, and then you're thinking, why am I here? I wish I'd chosen something else, and like can I just do the history side instead? And then but in the end, it was amazing. I managed to sort of finesse the system legally, and I had a wonderful time, and I did 6 months in Bologna at university, which was wild. I saw it as kind of a bonus year because I only really had to pass it and just demonstrate that I'd learned Italian to a better extent and I was fluent. So I studied Chinese. And I studied when I was there. No, it made no sense. And I'll tell you, it's really funny. But I did Chinese, I did Asian philosophy, and another one I did Hindi as well. And I think I did like an anthropology one. But it was just so funny because I had no idea what I was doing. And I had this exam in Chinese after literally like cramming for a month. Obviously, it was taught in Italian as well. I didn't even speak, And she was like,
sorry.
yeah.
So you're learning Chinese that you had no
idea.
to do.
No.
And you were learning it in your
Italian.
second language.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
I was just thinking, Jamie, I'm never gonna get this opportunity ever.
True.
I can, I'm so here. It's really, you have to have certain qualifications to do whatever. When am I gonna learn Chinese? And like,
yeah.
just like, why not make life just even more chaotic? Like, so I was there, and she just asked me in Chinese. I can't remember how to say it now, but because it was crammed. She goes, so what's the weather like? And I couldn't remember for the life of me how to actually say how the weather was.
Yeah.
So I just said the only word that I could remember, which was that it was sunny. And she looks out the window and goes, it's not sunny. So then I said in Chinese, it's not sunny. And she looked at me and she was like, fair play. And then she like passed me for it. But this was like, my year was just like that. I literally like slipped through the net for all of them. Like I had, but anyway, yeah. So Bologna was one side of things. And then I was supposed to go and do a work placement for the rest of the year in Chianti, which was, it looked very idyllic. And it was, in the hills and in Tuscany and selling wine and stuff. But I had a very valuable tip off from a friend who was doing the placement prior to me, that it was basically slave labor. That it was just awful. You were doing ungodly hours. It was in the middle of nowhere. Like the nearest place to get a bus was like 45 minutes walk.
Wow.
So I basically was in Bologna. I'd already left the country by now. I was very settled, and it was very close to the end of my first term. So I was thinking, what am I gonna do?
Yeah.
Because you have to keep all the stuff watertight to get the funding and to get all of the Erasmus sort of like guarantee, documents or whatever.
Yeah.
So luckily, I managed to get a really last-minute transfer to Pisa, and I did another university placement, and it worked out amazingly, because I had the time of my life there. And by this time, yeah, I did Arabic and Polish the second time around. I did, oh my God, I started doing neuroscience. I did a half a course of neuroscience, and then I realized that I just absolutely couldn't keep it up. Because I was revising atoms again, and chemical, GCSE chemistry. Yeah, I was literally, well, right. And I was just like, no, I'm way out of my depth. Let me just drink some Aperol Spritz and just wing my way out of, I don't know, get credit somehow, so, another way. But yeah, it was just, the whole experience was just, it was wild. It was like a holiday, but in the most unconventional, fantastic way. And yeah, I was so depressed to move back to rainy Manchester.
Yeah, I can understand. It sucks, doesn't it? Yeah. That is, you have a drive to do the most amazing thing.
Amazing is one word for it.
It is.
Silly is another.
I've just learnt so much about you in such a short space of time. That's crazy. But again, when else are you going to do this in your life?
Right. Life's too short.
Yeah.
We've seen that.
Yes, we have. Yes.
Learn the languages, darling.
Wow. Do you have, sorry, that's actually caught me really off guard. I'm like, yeah, okay. Wow. Okay. Do you have any plans to go back out there at some point in your life?
Yeah. I don't know about living there, but I'm definitely going to visit a lot, because my boyfriend lives in Pisa. So I actually met my boyfriend when I was on my year abroad. Oh. Very cliche, very lucky.
Another amazing thing to come out of the year.
It's really, yeah, it was wonderful, and actually, it made a big difference, I think, to my experience, because I was really involved in the local culture.
Yeah,
I was living like an Italian person, which was amazing. But yeah, I think I definitely have plans to keep going back to Pisa, at least for the next couple of years, because he has a like a work sort of commitment, obviously. But the situation at the moment in Italy is actually quite awkward politically. It's quite backward, and the government right now is, for want of a better word, than fascist.
Wow.
It's not going in the right direction at all. And so I think rather than go back there and live there, it would probably just be like
visiting
for now. Yeah. It's really not, on that note, sorry to get all political about it, but it's not a great environment at the moment. It's very sort of anti-queer, very anti, it's just not, it's the opposite of progression. So yeah, Pisa is fine. All the states still have their relative sort of autonomy, and you can still vote and all of that, but it's just, yeah,
still behind the times.
We're not perfect over here, but we've definitely got that bit better.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. It's time to get out this book. And if you like this book and you want 10% off this lovely Dingbats Notebook, you can use the code Jamie10 at checkout and get 10% off. This is my lovely guest book. And each person that I have on, we take a lovely Polaroid and they forward a question to a future creative.
Okay.
I'm going to give you a question from Mr. Ashley Stilburn. And I've used this a few times. It's such a good question. Ashley was the Phantom in Phantom of the Opera.
Wow.
Yeah. And he was in Les Mis for a while, for a few different characters. But he's...
a few different characters in Les Mis.
Yeah, he's quite Quite the man. He's also really into cycling now. It's got nothing to do with it, but there you go. His
Amazing.
question is: as a creative, the pressure and the need to drop important commitments at a moment's notice is inherent. How do you maintain meaningful relationships amidst this kind of turmoil and chaos?
I think it's a twofold process. I think a lot of it happens on its own. I think you don't always have to necessarily maintain the relationships from a sense of kind of like personal agency. Like I have to constantly make sure that everyone's happy.
Yeah.
Because I think if you have the right relationships and the foundations are there, those people will accommodate you, and you have that sort of mutual understanding with them as well, that you're respecting their time and their friendship as well, or relationship or whatever. But I would also say, so yeah, so the first part of the twofold process is basically just like it happens on its own. You know, if you find yourself going from A to B, and B being like suddenly you're really busy and you're doing loads of work, that's a wake up call, and that is that is a teller of the quality of your relationships and whether they're the right ones for you. But then the other side of it is finding the balance, and it's making that call, which is really difficult to do, of saying, actually, yeah, I'm not gonna be there for this thing, because I really have to do this gig, because it could be really good for me, and I wanna get more gigs in the future. But I think also you have to be nice to yourself and remind yourself of the fact that you're doing this because when you eventually get there, you're gonna take your friends along with you as well. So it's like, you're not necessarily letting them down, but it's like it's foresight. It's kind of like, I'm doing this and I'm gonna miss like this party, but we're gonna all celebrate, 5 years time when I'm main stage, or when I'm doing this or whatever, all of us are gonna be there. And I just think it's like a mutual thing.
Yeah, I love that. And you've touched upon the gigging scene.
Yeah.
I've had the same thing for years gigging as a musician, where it's impossible to know exactly where one gig is going to lead on to, or where one connection that you meet on a gig that you
Yeah.
have no idea they're going to be there is going to lead to in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time. Even some of these friends like Dante right there.
Yes.
I met him. I was on tour in Dubai with Hacienda Classical, and I met him by absolute fluke in the bar that he was finishing his gig at. I caught the last two tunes, and I never normally do this, but I went up and I was like, dude, you are the most amazing drummer I've ever seen. We stayed in touch, and then about a month and a half ago, I flew out to Dubai, and we did the podcast, and
So casual.
it's very casual.
But yeah.
You don't know where these people are going to become important again in your life. And if you've got friends that don't, that show some resistance to that,
Yes.
or just put obstacles in your way,
Yes.
it can be really hard, because you can't always explain to people that just aren't going to get it.
Yeah.
It's really tricky. So the gigging scene is hard.
Yeah,
right?
I've definitely had that as well. I think this year, there were a couple of gigs I was getting just before Christmas, and there was a person who is actually not my friend anymore. And this is the
Interesting.
thing, it's not because of I've not done it.
Are you listening?
I've not done nothing. No, but it was for that exact reason. It was just kind of they couldn't appreciate my judgment and the fact that I was actually respecting the friendship by considering their feelings, and instead they were gaslighting me. They were like, oh well, I can see where your priorities are now, and I'm like, yeah, but my priorities should be all of our, it's all of our priorities, like,
Yeah.
would you not do the same if you're in my position? And it's, you don't want any of that. You don't want that. You don't want jealous people. You don't want any sort of negativity, because it's just not worth it.
No,
you know
it isn't. And yeah,
unfortunately,
yeah. See you later. Bye.
darling. Yeah.
Relationships can be romantic, can be friendships, but you've also got a relationship with your family, your mum and dad, brothers and sisters. How have you found your creative endeavors? Have they strengthened your relationship with your family? How's that relationship side been?
I think, without making this sound like it's necessarily been a negative, I think, at least in the beginning with drag, if we take drag as an example, it was such an abstract idea, I think, for my family to sort of process,
Yeah.
and understand. My I'm also I'm the only queer person in my family as well. So there's kind of that attachment to drag culture. At least for me, it doesn't have to always be like that, but for me it is. That was just kind of like a big learning thing. And I think it was not necessarily something that they understood. And so when I was throwing all of my energy into it, I think perhaps there was a tendency for them to not see it as like an active, like as a serious pursuit, basically, just kind of like just whatever. But it was only when I started to do it a lot more sort of regularly, and I was putting, I was performing more and visible, and I was doing whatever that they understood, actually. No, this is just, you're doing like what we all do, you're in your bag, or you're just doing, you found your purpose or whatever. But I can't deny I'm very lucky, and I've always been very supportive. But I think it's just certain types of creative energy maybe take people a little bit longer to sort of understand. I think also I am a creative person, and I think in my family, most of them are, well, they're all either scientists or they've pursued quite a vocational sort of education, and doing other things, completely opposite, really. But I think it's not really affected our relationships in a different way. It's, if anything, it's just made everyone understand things. And yeah, it's always like this, I think.
Totally. Yeah, life is.
Yeah.
Have you found drag to be useful in any way when talking about sexuality?
I don't know whether it's so much sexuality as it is gender. I think if we're, without being problematic, if we put it under a general umbrella of queerness, whether that's sexuality or gender or whatever, I think it's definitely something that has helped them to understand what drag is.
Yeah.
Because they've seen drag as an extension of my queerness, whether that's being a non-binary person and experimenting with sort of gender binaries and gender convention, or some of my performances have been sexually sort of like queer sexual experiences. So it's been, I've been talking about men dating men, or whatever. It's kind of, it's an umbrella experience, it's a broad experience, but I think it's definitely been a part of that. Sexuality isn't something that I think comes into my drag a lot. It might be a like a subtext, if it's lyrics or whatever, and I'm being cheeky, but it's not like my main thing.
Yeah.
But it can be for some people.
Yeah.
People's a lot of drag queens I know have this very overly sexualized character, and that for them is their sort of opportunity to freely be a sexual person in a way that they're probably not feeling like they are able to in their everyday life because they're restricted.
Yeah.
So you can take it anywhere. For me, it's elements of everything, but it's just general queerness. It's just my experience as a queer person in a broad sense.
Final little segment I want to talk about is you're finishing uni literally as we speak. And you are gigging, you are getting ready for performances like Pride.
Yeah.
What's your sort of week to week look like in terms of a gigging artist in Manchester at the moment? What does that look like?
So, well, at the moment, I'm obviously juggling my degree, but from after tomorrow, I have my sort of my weekly job, which is dancing. Just it's go-go dancing in bars in Manchester, and I also have specific sort of gigs in other cities that are like cabaret gigs or their drag performances. And so no 2 weeks look the same. And I think that's actually something that is really fabulous about this lifestyle, because you just never know where you're going to end up. There is an element of sort of stability though, because I know that I'm going to do like the same sort of thing every now and then, but yeah, it's just you find yourself you find yourself all over, actually. And I've come to a point in my life where I'm actually having to say no to people.
Yes.
Right, finally, because once upon a time I was like, oh, I want this, I want the gig, I want to get booked or whatever, but actually, like, I'm so busy now
Good.
that
Other way
I'm
around.
not gonna have any time. I've got like 3 free weekends now up until now in September. So my weekdays are now gonna have to be writing my music and doing my own stuff, like my sort of Shanika working on and all of that. And it's just wild, like that sort of that trajectory, that sort of, but yeah, it can be anything. So this week, for example, I have Tomorrow when I've got my essay to submit, then I have rehearsals in the afternoon, and then I'm working in the evening, and then I have a show the next day, and then next weekend I'm going to Southampton, and I've got this big this wonderful gig with it's like a family catwalk extravaganza, like feel good sort of workshop for like young families, and so that's an example of something that's quite different. I don't do that all the time, but it's a big gig. And then
Did I see you recently at the Tate?
Yes.
As well. Tell us about that. Sorry, I've skipped over that. Epic.
It was really epic, and I had no business being there because I'm not a model. But essentially, I happened upon, this is how it works, right? So I was doing a go-go. I was doing a dancing gig just before Christmas. I was very lucky to do this job, and it was wonderful. And there were loads of different teams of people. There were people who I work with who we were just there dancing just before Christmas. But then there was a fashion show. So there were some, wild personalities there, and very sort of glamorous and whatever, and we just kind of exchanged social media. And then later on, they were, for Eurovision, they had managed to sort of organise this fantastic fashion exhibition at the Tate in Liverpool. And they messaged me and said, I just remember working with you before Christmas. I loved your energy. Let's go. Like, if you're free, let's do this. So I did it, and it was absolutely insane, and I loved it. And we were showcasing like brand new sort of like just fashion look for I think it was for graduates this year who were doing fashion degrees in and around the area. And we were just there. It was a celebration of it was like a Eurovision celebration. It was very queer heavy as well. It was very sort of just camp, and yes, it was wonderful. And now I can say that I've catwalked at the Tate.
It's epic. It was so cool to see, and I love as well that you've just said I had no business being there. I mean, you absolutely did.
Yeah.
You, but you're just leaning into it and just going for it, and that's
exactly
that's what it's all about. What does the next chunk of time look like for you?
The one thing I'm sure of is that I need to streamline my energy a little bit more and put it into something on its own, that being my drag. So I think I've just not had the time to invest in drag recently because I've been doing so many just random things. I've been at uni, I've been doing gigs as Jay, I've been doing cabaret gigs as Shanika, I've been choreographing for other people and taking more of a backseat role. And I think this summer, when I only have to focus on creative things, which again is a huge task, in all of my free time is just going to go into working on my music, so that I can then relaunch myself, and then come Pride in August, fingers crossed, I will have something new and ready to take me over onto the next step. What I've been doing up until now is building networks and doing all these different little things, so that when I find myself in that room at the right place at the right time that everyone talks about, I have common ground with people, and I have something that I can say, yeah, I've done this, I can get in that way. But yeah, it's going to be Shanika 2023.
I love it. Now, thank you so much for your time, your energy today. I also want to thank you for there's a mantra that I say at the end, which is something that I've thought and talked to loads of people about, which is being exactly you.
Okay.
Be exactly you. And when when I think of you, but also when I see you do what you do, you are leaning so hard into exactly what you want to do at that moment, whether it be these crazy degrees, whether it be your dance or your drag, or just how you present yourself. It's really inspirational, and I suppose it goes back to,
thanks, Jamie,
but it's all right. It goes back to the story that our mutual friend told us about at the Christie. It's exactly that, and it's I really want you to be able to remember that, because we don't think of ourselves in third person very much, but just by doing what you're doing with such force, it really is inspiring for so many people around. So
I really appreciate that. Thanks for saying that.
Thank you.
And likewise, of course.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
No, it's remarkable. And actually, this whole project is a wonderful idea. And
thank you very much.
Well done to you.
Thank you. If you're still listening at home, thank you very, very much. This is very weird because I've been doing it on 2 cameras, so I'll be looking at this wide lens. Wherever you are in the world and whatever you are doing, remember to create with people, connect with people, but most importantly, be exactly you. Until the next time, peace.